recording of Pilgrims Progress. Now over the gate there was written this promise, "Knock, and it shall be opened unto you." Therefore he knocked boldly, and that more than just once or twice, saying, "May I now enter here? Will he within open to sorry me, though I have been an undeserving rebel? If so, then shall I not fail to sing his lasting praise on high." While he awaited the keeper of the gate, he noticed that the door was curiously marred by many scars. He observed further that there were smoke stains on the stone arch over the door. He also saw the broken shafts and charred feathers from many arrows littering the ground. Said he with furrowed brow. "If I do not miss my guess, I would say that this gate has withstood more than just a simple siege or two." Soon there came a grave person to the gate named Goodwill, who asked, "Who knocks there?" "A poor burdened sinner," replied Christian, "fleeing unto Mount Zion from the city of destruction." With that the gate was thrown open, and Christian was so quickly snatched within by two powerful hands that he nearly went sprawling headlong upon the ground. Before Christian could even regain his balance, the door had been speedily shut fast and securely barred. Then Christian, a bit dazed by such hasty behavior, said, "Dear sir, what was the reason for giving me such a violent jerk?" Then answered Goodwill, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow, "Did you not notice the scars and burns on our little wicket gate?" "Yeah." "And did you chance to hear all the zinging and thumping sounds as I was shutting the door?" "Yes, I think I did." "What were they?" "Open the door a little and take a peek out to see what they were." So Christian loosed the bars cautiously, opened the door just a tiny crack, and there stuck fast in the wooden about the door were several burning arrows. "Oh my, fiery darts! Aye, flaming arrows, stabbed into the door. Aye, and from whom were these messengers of death sent?" "For you, dear traveler," said Goodwill gravely. "For you. Whence came they?" Goodwill pointed through the crack at an imposing castle looming large in the shadows of the misty forest, saying, "Look across the way." So Christian cracked the door just a bit wider and peeked out. "I see a castle hidden in the trees. It has great iron gates, and it flies the black banner. And it seems, sir, that it is not very far off from the wicket gate you keep. Within a bowshot, I should guess." While these words were still upon his lips, a flaming arrow went zinging over his head and buried its smoking shaft in the flower bed behind him. Quickly slamming the door, Christian leaned his burden back against it and, swallowing hard, said, "I say, this pilgrimage business is dreadfully dangerous stuff, isn't it?" "Aye," agreed the gatekeeper, "life and death stuff." "But who would want to kill a simple pilgrim like me?" he asked, incredulously. Then Goodwill answered, saying, "Open the door a wee crack and look out again, but not so wide." And so Christian obeyed, and with the utmost caution peeked him out through a tiny sliver of light. Then said Goodwill, "Can you see the dark castle?" "Aye," answered Christian. "To whom does it belong?" "'Tis the castle of the enemy, of which Beelzebub himself is the captain." "It is?" "Aye. And from its walls he and they that be with him shoot arrows at those who come up to this gate, hoping to kill them ere they enter in." "But I am new upon this journey," said Christian. "Why would he want to destroy me? Surely I am no threat to him." "Nay, but you are," declared Goodwill. "The greatest of God's warriors began just as you have done. And since the evil one has no way of knowing what God's grace may make of you, he tries to nip you in the bud. Besides, it is a principle of the Dark Kingdom that none shall leave its service without encountering trials, tribulations, and death at every step." "Then I have great cause to rejoice and tremble," said Christian thankfully. "Aye, indeed you have," said Goodwill, as he bolted the door fast. "But tell me, how is it that you came all alone?" Then Christian bowed his head in sadness and answered softly, "Because none of my family or neighbors saw their danger." "Did any of them know you were coming?" "Oh yes, almost the entire town saw me go." "Then I am surprised that no one followed after to persuade you to go back." "Oh, some did. Both Obstinate and Pliable came running after me. But when they saw that they could not change my mind, Obstinate went stomping back. As the name, so the man. And Pliable, well, exclaimed Christian with a note of sadness to his voice. Pliable was happy enough to come along with me until we carelessly fell into the slough of despond. Hey, you must have taken your eye off the light. Aye, so we did, admitted Christian. What then? Well, for a short time we both tried to press forward, but as soon as the muck got past our waists, he became discouraged and refused to venture farther. Alas, poor man, was not the celestial glory precious enough to brave a few difficulties? Truly, if the truth be known, I am no better than he. Why do you say that? Did not he run back, and did not you come straight on? 'Tis true, agreed Christian, with his head hung low. He went on back to destruction, but I also turned aside, back into the way of death. Up to the town of morality, no doubt. Yes. Said Goodwill angrily. Directed thereto by the carnal arguments of one Mr. Worldly Wiseman, I suppose? Yes, but how did you know? Because this wicked fellow attacks and attracts nearly everyone with his fleshly reasoning, and frankly there are few that escape his snare. Then I have more reason than ever to be thankful to my Lord, said Christian with a sigh of relief. More than you know, and I suppose he was going to have you seek for ease at the hands of Mr. Legality or one of his base-born sons. Aye, their names were Civility and Psychology. Pah! Nothing but cheats, the lot of them, said he with righteous indignation. But go on. Did you truly take his vile counsel? Yes, admitted Christian. At least as far as I dared, for I was nearly crushed by the overhang of that fearful mountain. That mountain will be the death of all who try to enter in by the works of their own hands, affirmed Goodwill. Frankly, I am amazed that you escaped being ground to powder. Yeah, agreed Christian gratefully. It is amazing. Thanks be to God. But now, here I am. More deserving of death on the horns of Sinai than to be here talking with you, my lord. Oh, what a blessed privilege, that one so faithless as I should still be allowed within these wondrous walls. No need for surprise on that account, dear Christian. We have no restrictions against any who would enter this place. Against none? Against none. No matter what they may have done before coming here, no one is shut out. Thank God. Yes, said Goodwill, smiling, for everything. But come now, good Christian, walk with me a little way, and I will teach you about the way you must go. So he took him to the edge of the compound, and pointing to a small little trod path, he said, Here, look, straight before you. Do you see that little path? Aye, that is the way you must go. Christian looked up along the way and then turned to Goodwill, saying, 'Tis a bit narrow, don't you think? To this Goodwill only smiled and said, This path through the wilderness of this world was carved out by the patriarchs, the prophets, Christ and his apostles, but it is so narrow. You're only passing through, dear Christian. And besides, it was wide enough for Christ. Truly? Aye. Then I suppose it must be wide enough for me, said Christian decidedly. It is, answered Goodwill confidently, wide enough for anyone and with room to spare. Has it a name? Aye, it's called by our Lord the Straight Way, and he laid it out using the surveying instruments of heaven itself. This is the way you must go. But it is easy to follow, asked Christian, fearful of getting off the path again. Are there any turnings or windings wherein a stranger may lose his way? Nay, none. But beware, for there are many ways that come down and intersect with this one. Then might I not become confused? Nay, fear not, Goodwill continued calmly. They are easy to detect, for they are all broad and easy of travel. Only the right way is straight and narrow. You may also detect them because only the right way ascends upwards. Ah, said Christian, breathing a sigh of relief. Then the wayfaring man thought, though a fool, need not err therein. None need err, smiled Goodwill. All who are willing to do his will shall know the right way. Now 'tis time be off on your journey. One thing more, dear Goodwill, being, can you cut this burden off my back, begged Christian? I cannot do it myself, and back home no one else could even see it. Can you see it? Oh, aye. I see it. I can. Very well indeed. And a very dark and grievous one it is, too. Then can you help me? No, dear Christian. The place of beginnings is not the place of deliverance. You must be content to bear it until you come to a sacred hill, where it will fall from your back off its own accord. When shall this be? Sighed Christian longingly. When? Sooner than you think and longer than you wish, was the wise reply. Only be content with your Lord's timing. At this saying, Christian stood tall, tightened his frayed cord belt, and said, Then let me gird up my loins and address myself to my journey. Are there any dangers yet ahead? None but such as have overtaken all men, said he. But rest assured that with every trial your Lord has made a vow, he has made a way of escape. That is a comfort. Can you tell me what lies ahead next? Yes, when you have gone some distance from this gate, you will come to the house of the interpreter. And what shall I do there? Queried Christian, his eyes now fast on the path to be trod. The same as here. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Seek his wisdom, and ye shall find it. Ask for help, and it shall be given you. I shall, promised Christian, as he took the first steps of his long journey. Thank you for your help, dear goodwill. God be with you. Fare you well, good Christian. Godspeed. Godspeed. And so he traveled many a mile without further event till he came to the house of the interpreter. There he knocked over and over until there came from within the voice of the interpreter saying, Who knocks, please? Sir, I be a man coming from the city of destruction and bound for Mount Zion. Oh, I was told by the man that stands at the gate. Gate? Yes, the wicket gate that stands at the head of this way. Ah, he said that if I called here, you would show me excellent things that would be helpful to me on my journey. Ah, then welcome, welcome. Do come in, said the interpreter cheerily as he swung open the door. Before Christian stood a dignified gentleman who bowed low before him and said, Follow me, and I will show these things that will indeed profit thee. Most gladly, said Christian eagerly as he squeezed his cumbersome burden through the narrow door. The wise one led him first into a private room, where he bade his butler come light a candle and open a door into a softly lit and elegantly furnished gallery. Though the open door, Christian saw a greater than life-size painting of a very sober and distinguishing-looking person hung upon the wall. When Christian first saw it, he exclaimed, Oh my, such a glorious piece of art. Now the person portrayed in this amazing portrait had his eyes lifted up to heaven. In his hand he held the book of books. Written upon his lips was the law of truth. Behind his back, the world hung in space. He stood as if he were pleading with men for their salvation, and over his head hung a crown of gold. Then said Christian, What is the meaning of this fine work of art? The man pictured in his parable is one of 1,000, began the interpreter. He can say in the words of the apostle, Though ye have 10,000 instructors in Christ, yet have you not many fathers. For in Christ Jesus have I begotten you through the gospel. Then if this is a parable for the eyes, said Christian thoughtfully, everything in the painting must have a secret meaning. Aye. Then do tell, dear interpreter, what means his upward gaze? It shows that his chief goal is to seek out and to understand the dark mysteries of the kingdom. And what about the book in his hand and the words written on his lips? Ah, 'tis the best of books, he replied proudly, and out of it come the words of truth written upon his lips. And what about his pleading look? Well, this is to show his love for the lost. His mission is to continually plead with the lost, that they might accept the Lord of the way. Ah, noted Christian. Then the world pictured so far behind him must show his disdain for mere earthly treasures. Ah, good, said the interpreter with a smile. Well thought out, dear pilgrim. Well thought out indeed. And the crown? Well, began Christian as he paused to think a moment, the crown hangs just over his head, and it be thickly covered with stars. Therefore might not this crown show us the great glory of his reward? Aye, agreed the interpreter with a smile and a slow nod of his head. He seems to be a great and noble person, added Christian as he looked admiringly at the painting. And so he is, responded the interpreter proudly. And he is the only one whom thy Lord has appointed to be your guide. Then most gladly will I follow his voice, for I can see that he cares for me. If you so do, he will guide you safely through all the trying moments of this way, and at last lay thee down in green pastures, said the interpreter as he bade his servant close the door. Thanks be to God, said Christian gratefully. Indeed, replied the interpreter, beckoning with the hand for Christian to follow. Come. Then he took him by the hand and led him into a very large parlor that was the dustiest, sootiest place you ever could imagine in your worst imaginings. It had dust everywhere. There was dust on the floor, dust on the table, dust on the chairs, dust on the shelves and books and beds. Now this was not just a thin layer of dust such as you come home to after a long holiday at grandmother's house. Oh no. This was years of dust piled upon decades of dust. So deep was this dust that it made little puffy clouds about Christian's feet as he walked. Now, after giving Christian a moment to consider, the interpreter called for one of his servants named Moses and said, Sir, I want you to begin sweeping this room clean. To this the servant answered cheerfully, Yes, sir. And began to sweep he did, and that with a right good will too. And oh my, you cannot imagine the cloud of dust he stirred up. Oh, aye, such a cloud of dust that one could scarcely see from one side of the room to the other. Then did Christian begin to cough and spit and sputter as though he were a man about to drown. Said he between his spasms of coughing, Dear interpreter, help! Then the interpreter called down the hallway for a young maid named Gospel to come help him. Gospel, Gospel, come here, my dear. There soon appeared a bright young maid in the doorway who curtsied and said with a smile, Did you call, master? Yes, my child, come quickly. I want you to bring much water and sprinkle this room. And so the maid quickly did as she was bidden. She sprinkled all about the floor and then wet the dust rags in the broom. Soon all the dust began to settle upon the wet floor, and before long all was swept as clean could be. Said Christian, What does this mean? Is there another allegory here? Aye, said the interpreter with a smile. Can you guess it? The pilgrim thought long, and the pilgrim thought hard, until the pilgrim had run clean out of thoughts to think, and had to confess, No, sir, I can by no means plumb its depths. Please explain. Then the interpreter taught him, saying, This parlor is the heart of a man. That was never sanctified by the sweet grace of the gospel. The dust is his desire to evil. It shows the inward corruptions that defile the whole man. Then here comes the law into his life, and seeing a great need, he begins to sweep things clean. But the girl who brought the water and settled the dust is the gospel. Ah, said Christian, beginning to see a trace of light. Now, continued the interpreter, did you notice that as soon as the law began to sweep, the dust of evil desire was stirred up? I should say it was, coughed Christian. And just as quickly as one corner was swept clean, all the dust seemed to fly through the air and settle even more thickly in another. This is to teach thee that the law alone cannot cleanse the heart of sin. Instead, it seems to revive it, strengthen it, and increase it in the soul. Why is the law so helpless to do more? Asked Christian, a bit puzzled. Because the law is only a mirror for thy soul, said the interpreter. A mirror may show thee thy need of cleansing ever so clearly, yet it hath not power to cleanse thee of one small spot. Ah, nodded Christian, beginning to understand more clearly. So it is with the law. It is very quick to shine thy sins into your face and show thee thy need. But, he said emphatically, it does not give thee power to subdue one small sin. 'Tis true. 'Twas one law that first laid this burden upon my back, and 'twas the law that was near to crush me as I approached the town of morality. Aye, aye, the law has more than enough power to point out thy need, but not near enough to relieve it. But, did you notice the damsel that came to sprinkle the water? Oh yes, verily, I think she has saved us all from a dusty death. Aye, he agreed with one last cough. In the same way shall sin be vanquished and subdued by the sprinkling of faith. Indeed, marveled Christian. Aye, and in the same way shall thy soul be cleansed and fashioned into a temple fit for habitation by the King of glory. Verily, can it be so? If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. Lord, I believe, Christian cried out longingly. Help thou my unbelief. Well said, nodded the interpreter as he took Christian by the hand and turned to go. Yea, well said indeed. Come along. You mean there is still more? Oh yes, much more, he replied, neither turning back nor slackening his pace. Come along. I saw then in my dream that the interpreter led him next into a small room where two young lads were sitting. The name of the eldest was Passion, who in a very gruff voice was heard to say such things as, "Give me that toy," or "Get out of my way, you." The other child was named Patience, and from him came words such as, "Thank you," or "Yes, sir, if you would, please." Then Christian heard Passion bark at a servant saying, "Hurry up, would you?" Not long after that he heard Patience say, "I would like that very much, thank you." Then said Christian, somewhat in a puzzlement, "Do tell, why is the one child so gruffly discontent?" "Because his governor would have him wait for his inheritance until the beginning of next year, but he thinks he must have it all now." "Let us watch," said the interpreter quietly, guiding Christian into a remote corner where they could observe without being seen. Then Passion snapped angrily, "Right now, I said! Bring it here, right now!" In answer was heard a nasal, high-pitched voice from the hallway saying, "Coming, Master Passion." Soon I saw a brow-beaten wisp of a servant come staggering into Passion's presence with fear and trembling. Over his bent back hung a great bag of treasure, as called for by his young master, but I could see that he was quite loath to pour it out for fear that the lad would squander it all and soon come to want. Then Passion, seeing his hesitation, cried out, "What you waiting for, slave man? Pour it out. Pour it all out now." And so the servant reluctantly obeyed and poured the glittering contents clinking about Passion's feet. At this the lad chuckled gleefully and ran his fingers through gold doubloons, rubies, and diamonds. Then he glanced over his shoulder and said in derisive tones, "Howdy ha ha, Patience. I got's mine while you got's none. So sit and cry while I have fun. Howdy ha ha ha." Then whispered Christian to the interpreter, "Such a rude fellow." To this the interpreter only smiled grimly and replied softly, "The story is not yet over, dear Christian. Watch and listen yet a bit more." Then Passion continued to taunt his brother, saying, "You think the governor's bringing your reward later, don't you? Well, you're dead wrong, pal. Our Lord delays his coming, maybe forever. And if you don't get wise like me, you won't get nothing." "'Tis unfair," complained Christian. To this the interpreter said quietly, "Watch. Watch as the years pass before your eyes." Then I beheld in amazement as the seasons swept swiftly over the boys and their fascinated observers. Spring, summer, fall, each in their turn, came and went as in a dream. Then I saw that before winter had well set in, Passion had played away all of his fortune and begun to be in want. Then his scorn succumbed to sorrow and his teasing turned to tears. When he realized his folly and would have repented, there was none to hear. Then said Christian triumphantly, "'Tis just and fair. He got just what he asked for." To this the interpreter answered, "The story is not yet done, dear Christian. Watch on." And so Christian watched as more seasons passed over them. Finally, when the appointed time came, the governor of the children came with his books of records to bestow gifts where they were deserved. Then said the governor, "Greetings from the king, dear Patience. We are here to bestow upon you all of our Lord's rewards. In addition to your principal, you will receive interest from the king's own bank. Come, gentlemen." Now at this there came in not one servant, nor two, or even three or four, but many. All of them bent low beneath bags of treasure beyond computation. These they joyfully poured out at Patience's feet, to his great surprise and greater delight. But when Passion saw how great was his brother's portion, he was near to be choked with covetous envy. Then said Christian in astonishment, My, so much more. Aye, the king's bank yields the highest interest in the universe. Those who invest in his bank soon find that the interest is many times greater than the principal." Then Christian saw Patience bow himself courteously and give thanks to the governor for his sound counsel, saying, I do thank thee for thy wise guidance, dear governor. Now Passion, finally beginning to comprehend the greatness of the delayed reward, began to rail and curse his misfortune, saying, "This is unfair, completely unfair. All we had was his promise to return, and then he came sneaking in like a thief in the night. Unfair, unfair, unfair." To this the governor replied calmly, but yet sternly, "You were told that your lord was coming, the same as your brother. And when you were rich, you did not part with even 1 penny to relieve your brother's poverty. Therefore, although he is desirous and well able to relieve yours, he is forbidden so to do. Go." "Go?" snapped Passion. "Go where?" In answer, the governor sadly lowered his head and pointed out into the darkened courtyard, saying, "I gave you my promise, and you counted me a base liar. Therefore you must take your place in outer darkness with all who refuse to believe. Servants, bind this knave and cast him out of my presence." To this Passion had no answer to give, but was sent spinning into outer darkness with wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then said Christian, trembling a bit, "I perceive that I have seen yet another allegory, dear interpreter. Aye, these 2 lads are figures, Passion of the men of this world, and Patience of those of the world to come. The men of this world would prefer to have all their good things now rather than later. And I know their type. Their chief proverb is that a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush." "Aye," nodded the interpreter sadly, "'tis true. And that saying carries more weight with them than all the divine testimonies of the good world to come. But I'll wager that soon they will be like Passion, reduced to rags and sorrows and cast away. Aye, and no doubt at the very time that good men are just receiving title to their finest treasures. Thou hast wisely discerned, sir. Come." We'll continue with our reading tomorrow.